Hi, this is Val Hart, the real Dr. Doolittle, and today I'm talking with Elise Gaston Chand. She's a horsewoman with over 30 years' experience in horse management, breeding, competition, and industry marketing and advertising. Elise was a horse-crazy kid raised by non-equestrian parents. Oh, my God, I can't wait to hear about that. And you're raising a young daughter who shares your love. I'm so glad. And you live in Texas, which is very cool because I'm in Texas, too.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, your website, in case anyone wants to go there, and it's on the Internet right now, is EliseGastonChand.com, EliseGastonChand.com. Welcome, Elise. Thank you so much for spending time with me.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Great. So what's something funny or that you can tell us that's happened in your life with horses?
Oh, the difficult part is just picking one thing. I suppose the first thing that comes to mind is the importance of ensuring that your girth is tightened sufficiently for the purposes of riding. I was out as a child one day, and my family, because I'm the only horse person in the entire family, with the exception now of my own daughter. But many, many years ago, my brother and my stepbrother were often tasked with keeping me company riding way out into the woods because, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, it wasn't considered particularly safe. We were way out in the woods of Virginia and West Virginia.
Yeah, wow.
And so I had 2 horses because you can't have one horse alone. They're herd animals, and they go a little crazy without company. And my poor stepbrother, who is the quintessential urban Dallas successful yuppie kind of guy, had never been on a horse in his life, climbs on my bigger horse, and I'm on the smaller, and we're out cantering and having a fabulous time in the woods, and I get ahead of him, and all of a sudden I hear him yelling, and I think, he's faking because he was a big kidder, and I turn around and I look as we're cantering, and he's going sideways. The saddle had come completely loose and was on the side of the horse, and as I watched, it continued to rotate. The horse dropped to a trot, and he was spreading his legs as he was trotting, trying to swing them around my stepbrother as he continued to slide all the way down the horse's side, clinging to the saddle like a limpet, up under the horse's belly with his head tucked, to keep him bashing on the ground. And, there are weeds, and they're smacking him in the face, and I laughed so hard, I literally fell off the horse I was riding. He's screaming, what do I do? What do I do? And I said, well, let go. And he did, and happily my horse jumped over him. And the last we saw of the 2 of them, as they went galloping back to the barn, kicking and having a fabulous time with the saddle banging around on the one horse's belly and the stirrups dragging. It was terrible. It was
that's hysterical. Terrible. Oh, my God. Oh,
yeah, and then we had a 2-mile walk back to the barn to cross the horses with my stepbrother, really, really annoyed and embarrassed and swearing he was never going to do this again.
Well, and fortunately, he didn't get hurt. So,
fortunately, that's why it makes it a funny story, not a tragic one.
Yes, not a tragic one.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God. Oh, that's so funny. It reminds me of too many incidents myself. So, first lesson, everybody.
Growing up in a non-equestrian family, literally everything that could be done wrong, we did wrong. And I am convinced I didn't have one guardian angel. I had an entire troop of guardian angels who oversaw everything that I did with and around horses, because literally we did everything wrong.
Oh, this is hysterical. So you've learned a lot of things the hard way.
Yes.
And you're giving the rest of us the benefit of your good experience, and fortunately have lived to tell the tale about what not to do and what to do.
Yes,
oh, gosh. Yeah. So the book you've written, among others, you've written a lot of books, fiction and nonfiction, but the one we're talking about today is A Parent's Guide to Riding Lessons. Everything you need to know to survive and thrive with a horse-loving kid. I love this book. So we're going to talk about how to keep horses economically. I want to give, and I know you do too, part of the mission is to help non-equestrians understand and help guide their horse-loving kids, activities. and talk about training and instructors and writing lessons and things like that. So what made you decide to write this book?
I got mad.
You got mad.
I got mad. I was livid. I was absolutely livid. I was doing a barn tour of both barns and riding stables and equestrian centers. So the differential there basically just denotes the size of the facility. So a riding barn might be just a small place where they have just a handful of lesson horses, all the way up to an equestrian center could have 10 professional instructors on staff, and they tour the country, and they do lots and lots of very specific high-level competition. So this runs the range. And I was doing a tour of these barns, and I had my daughter with me, who at the time was about 5 years old. And as a part of the tour, I'd go in and I'd observe lessons that were being given. I'd look at the facilities and basically talk about the business of running a horse farm in all its permutations. And I had the occasion to observe a lesson in one particular barn, which shall remain nameless, where they were putting children on saddlebreds. Now, saddlebreds, for people who are not familiar with the breed, beautiful, elegant, very upright horses. Their heads are very high. They're very sleek. They're considered a gaited horse, which means they have a specific kind of a gait other than the standard walk, trot, canter that anybody who's seen a movie with horses in it has seen the way horses move, right?
Right.
And saddlebreds step very high, and so their movement is a lot like a sewing machine, you know, where it's very upright, the knees come high. Well, it's also rather difficult to ride, even for someone who is a skilled and experienced rider. Compounding that, saddlebreds have a special kind of a saddle that professionals refer to as a slick. There's a reason it's called a slick. It's a cut-back saddle, so the very front comes way back toward the rider's seat. It's a flat saddle, so there's no raised section in the back that kind of cups the rider. It's a flat saddle, so it's very smooth. And then the surface of the saddle is slick, just like the name. Combined with the horse's movement, saddlebreds are also very spirited, very quick, very, I don't want to say flighty, but try to give more of a rounded description of what their personalities are like. And so people who ride saddlebreds are riding them for a particular reason. They love the spiritedness, they love the gait, they love the elegance of them, but they're not an ideal breed for teaching children, particularly young children. And they're not an ideal breed even for teaching adults who don't already ride well. As I said when I began this minor diatribe, they're a horse and it's a discipline that even experienced riders have difficulty mastering. So we're in this barn. I was horrified to see that their lesson horses were saddlebreds.
Wow.
And they had children on them. Wow. And that combination is a very frightening combination. And sure enough, within 5 minutes of this little girl who was my child's age being put on the saddlebred, she was on the ground. Now, these are also tall horses. So, you know, they're 16 two hands, 16 one hands. I mean, they're big horses. And the child fell to the ground. She's crying. Happily, she wasn't hurt. But the instructor's like, get back up on the horse. Well, yes, when you fall off of a horse, the common directive is get back on the horse so that you can master your fear. Well, when you're 5 years old, you've just fallen from a height of about 6.5 feet on a horse that's wild-eyed and freaking out, honestly. That's not the time to be forced back into something, because now the child was very upset and frightened. The horse is becoming more and more frightened because the horse takes its cues from the rider. If the rider is calm, the horse is likely to be calm. If the rider's frightened, the horse is going to think, because of the herd instinct and the psychology, there's something to be frightened of.
Yes.
Well, the mom in all of this, I'm looking at the mom and I'm waiting for her to step in on her child's behalf and say, look, my child is frightened, she's crying, you know, this is not a pleasant experience for her. She's yelling at her child to get back on the horse. So all of these things really, really upset me. They frightened me, they upset me, and I was most concerned for the safety of the child, for the experience of the horse, too, because this is not a great experience for the horse, and the animal is a partner in this.
Yes, they are.
And for the mothers not understanding, as a non-equestrian, that this was an explosive, very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And finally, I was upset with a professional for not acting like a professional in the child's and the horse's best interest.
Yeah.
Came home, fussing to my husband, who's a non-equestrian. I was going on at great length about how awful this was and what it was all like. And after about, 3 hours of this, he finally said, why don't you go write it down or something? Just get it out of your head. So I started writing. And before I knew it, I had written, probably about 150 pages. Because what happened was I started out with this premise of safety for children and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
Right.
And I thought, well, how would a non-equestrian know any of this? Right. And then I kind of got to, and another thing, and another thing. And pretty soon the book was born.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
And it's a great book, and you covered so many fabulous points that, God, I wish I had when I was a kid, and I know that, anybody venturing into this, if you don't know that this is a dangerous sport, or maybe you do and we're worried about that, you need some tips, you need some guidance. And the beauty and joy of connecting with an equine partner and learning to ride is such a valuable experience. For any child or anyone who really feels that yearning, you should do it, and you should certainly educate yourself and know what you're doing in order, like you said, to be safe, to keep your horse safe, and to have a great experience. So let's describe your book for folks who've not yet seen it. And again, the title is A Parent's Guide to Riding Lessons, Everything You Need to Know to Survive and Thrive with a Horse-Loving Kid. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay. It actually started out as the Parent's Manual for Horse-Crazy Kids.
I like that.
Yeah, well, it was more succinct. And so when the title came back from the publisher, and I adore my publisher, and I saw what has to be the longest book title in the history
pretty long.
of books. I literally could not remember the title for about the first week or two, and my daughter, memorized it, and then she would spout it for me at the speed of an auctioneer. And I had to go, wait, slow down, tell me that again. And finally I just wrote it down and I put it on my computer so I could remember it. Really, it's about a lot more than just riding lessons. It literally encompasses the entire experience of having a child who adores horses. Yeah. And I try to approach it from the perspective that this is not some big mystery world. One thing that I've noticed is that non-equestrian parents are very intimidated by the specialized language, their terminology, not just the horse. There's this animal that's immense and moves very fast and is incredibly strong and has a mind of its own. All of that's intimidating enough. And then the idea of putting your precious child up on top of that animal when you don't know anything about it, it has to be a frightening experience and an intimidating experience. And then you add this rarefied air that exists in a lot of barns, and not because it's an exclusivity issue, although that does exist in some barns.
It does.
But more because there's the inside, the people on the inside who know the language, who know the terminology, who are comfortable around horses. Yeah. And then there's everybody else. Yeah. And so it feels like there's this wall that exists between the two dichotomous worlds within a barn. And I wanted to provide an inside view, to give parents the key to the kingdom, so to speak, and help them understand that really it's not that rarefied. There is terminology, but there's a reason for the terminology. And yes, there's a lot of tack. Yes, there's bridles and saddles and girths and saddle pads, and everything's different according to the discipline and according to your skill level and according to any special needs that the rider might have. Right. But there's a reason for every bit of it, just as the clothes, for example, look kind of strange, particularly in the English riding world. But there's a reason for all of it. There's a very robust history from the military and the cavalry that resulted in the type of clothes that we wear today in English, just as there is a robust history and culture that revolved around the Western discipline and why people ride in the clothes that they ride on the Western side, or the saddles and the specialized bridles that they have in that world. It's all intended to be very functional. Yes. And I thought that by explaining that and then explaining why, when you're in a lesson, you go round and round and round and round, and to someone who's not familiar with horses, it can look incredibly boring and like not a whole lot is being accomplished. But if you have some insight into some of the things that the instructor's looking for and some of the things that the rider's trying to accomplish, it can make it a lot more interesting. And then, with all of this knowledge, the most important thing is the parent can participate. Because one of the things that I've seen in barns is that the parent takes the child does the lesson, the parent sits in the car and reads a book or goes and gets a Coke or something and then comes back and they go home.
Right.
And I really wanted this to be an opportunity, just like with soccer or with football or with baseball or volleyball or whatever the sports that other children are involved in, just as the parents can kind of get what's going on and participate and talk about it. I wanted to give that same kind of insight into riding as an opportunity for parent and child to have something to talk about and to share.
Yeah. I love that approach, too, because so often, parents are wondering why they're disconnected from their kids.
Exactly.
Or they don't have the language, they don't understand them, and so if you get your child involved and support them in their love for horses and their need to fulfill that, for themselves, and, and what an amazing discipline. It's a lifelong discipline. It's a body, mind, and spirit discipline, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not like riding a skateboard or a bicycle or a motorcycle even, or it's about partnering with an immense beast, a sentient being, with a big heart, hopefully, that you're entrusting your child's life to take care of them. And there's an intricate dance going on behind the scenes that you may not be privy to or know how to understand. And so if you open the doors of communication, oh my God, how much richer can your relationship with your children be?
Absolutely. And it's also incredibly healthy for the children, particularly teenaged girls. There has been a myriad of studies done by psychiatric associations, pediatric associations as well, about the benefit, the very real psychological and physical benefit of girls, particularly teenage girls, being involved with horses, because, the teenage years are so rife with emotion and angst and feelings of isolation and to be involved with any animal, but particularly with the horse, where you're establishing that partnership that you were talking about, and reaching an agreement, a cooperative agreement with an animal, another being. It brings the child, the girl in particular, out of her shell and requires that she extend herself. She get out of her own head, get out of the emotions or whatever that may govern other parts of her day and her life, and connect with another living creature. A terrific byproduct of that is that barns are almost always filled with girls who have the exact same interests, who are just as enthusiastic, who adore being around horses and are energetic and involved and vibrant and full of life, and they find this avenue of self-expression, and they can share that with one another. So a child who may be very quiet and reserved at school suddenly can find herself in a barn with other girls who are just like her, and find her niche, and really come out of her shell. The physical component of it is tremendous too, because being around horses, a lot of folks think that you're just sitting on the horse and the horse is doing all the work. But there is a huge physical component to this, that you get a workout.
Oh yes,
and,
you are.
If you're riding right, you get a workout, and it has been long established the importance of physical fitness in children, particularly with the increase and epidemic of obesity in the U.S. This is an opportunity to help combat that and to establish good, positive habits at an early age.
Yes. Yeah, and with meaning.
Yes,
I find one of the things about fitness for all of us, or for me especially, I should speak of, is if what I'm doing physically as exercise doesn't have meaning or purpose, or it's just, repetition of, walking on the darn treadmill or, whatever, I'm not going to keep up with it. It's a lot harder to keep up with it. But then when I get with horses, I don't even notice. I mean, I'm working hard for hours,
yes.
you know, and I don't even notice. It's just there to do, and I'm doing it, and my body's happy. It's like my body gets really happy,
Absolutely.
and I crave it. I'm interested. I want it. I miss it when I don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah.
That's true. There's also a wonderful component for disabled riders.
Yes.
And individuals who may be confined to a wheelchair, for example, or who have mobility restrictions,
yeah,
can go to incredible places. There's therapeutic riding centers that are certified, and they have specialized instructors, and actually a lot of health benefits.
Yes.
The health benefit providers will offer some discounts just as they would going to any other type of physical therapy, so that individuals can ride. And the way the horse moves actually mimics the way human hips move when we walk, and this helps to stimulate the brain and the related muscles of a body that otherwise might struggle to walk or might not be capable of walking. And it allows a freedom when you think about it, because now suddenly you've got greater mobility than a person on their own 2 feet. You could go from confinement to a wheelchair, for example, onto a horse that's capable of running 35, 40 miles an hour.
Right. Powerful.
And it's just an instant transfiguration.
Yes. Yeah. And then autistic children, you know, that when they work with horses, we've seen miracles happen.
Yes.
I mean, they'll come, children who can't speak, they get with their horse and all of a sudden they can talk.
Yep.
You know, or all kinds of amazing things happen. So it's well worth looking into for anyone that's considering it. And, of course, the key is to be educated about what you're doing. Right?
It's imperative. Absolutely imperative.
Yeah. So, Elise, when did you begin writing? How long have you been writing?
Well, actually, my first word was a mangled version of horse, and my parents knew they were in for it. We used to drive. I was born in Virginia in horse country, and we used to drive past horse farms. We lived in a normal little house and everything, but we would drive past horse farms, and this was in the days before car seats and seat belts even. And so I would be pressed up against the window of the car, looking at the horses in the pasture, just yelling, horse, horse, you know, going crazy, whacking on the window, stop, you know, go back. And I would drag my parents down the street with carrots that I would steal out of the refrigerator. I'd pick up handful of grass, anything that I thought might tempt a horse to come to the fence to see me. Yes. And so my parents finally relented, and they thought, well, you know what, the actual reality of being around horses is not going to be anything like the romance of it. Yes, they're beautiful animals, but, you know, they're dirty and it's hard work, and they're messy, and they have minds of their own, and they don't always do what you want them to do. And so they would take me to these little carnival rides where back then you would get on a pony, and instead of being attached to like a wheel contraption that just goes in a circle, it was an outlined path. And you'd sit on the pony, and the pony, you know, would just plod through the path, and it would finally get to the end of the path, and you'd get off, and the pony would go back to his buddies. Well, when I got to the end of the path, I was kicking and screaming to stay on the pony, and somehow the owner of this facility decided that I was a kindred spirit and would allow me to just ride until I literally fell asleep in the saddle, and my parents could pry me out off of the pony's back and take me home. So technically I started riding when I was about 2 years old.
Wow.
And I got my first pony when I was 7.
Wow.
And he was Satan's spawn. His name was Barney, and I actually mentioned Barney in the book. And this thing kicked me, bit me, rolled over on with me on his back, chased me around the backyard, because we had him in our backyard for a period of time, in the center of Dallas, if you can imagine.
Oh, wow.
Yes, before he was summarily evicted and sent to a farm nearby. But he was miserable. He was absolutely miserable, and I adored every hair on that beast's hide. But he was my first pony.
Oh, God. And you survived to tell the tale again. How many lives have you had now, I'm wondering?
You know, I'm not quite sure, but I survived Barney, and then we had a succession of other horses that, suspiciously, my parents' friends were willing to give away. Just to get rid of. So that saying, never look a gift horse in the mouth. always look a gift horse in the mouth. People will not give away an animal that has some intrinsic value unless it is a miserable beast that nobody can handle. And we bought every one of them on the market in Dallas, Texas in the 70s.
Oh,
yes.
my God.
Yes, I had a horse named Joe who put a girl in a chest cast because he hooked her. Yes.
Oh, my God.
My favorite part about Joe was he would not go forward. He would only go backward.
Interesting.
So to get away from the barn to go riding, I'd climb on him, and I'd have to back him away from the barn. And we would back for a quarter of a mile before I could finally turn him around. And then he would spin on me, and he'd go galloping back to the barn as fast as he could. And that was my riding experience with Joe. Every time I went to ride Joe, that's what we did. And he was also 16-3 hands, and I was 9 years old.
Oh, God.
A really bad combination.
Oh.
Gigantic horse and a little bitty kid.
Oh, my God.
Yes, and a succession of other horses followed who were equally bad until my mother happily discovered the U.S. Pony Club. And I'm convinced that they saved my life. And they had a wonderful facility that was recognized by the USPC in Berryville, Virginia. It was Pigeon Hill Riding School, to give them a little plug.
Okay.
And Susan Good corrected all of my bad habits and taught me how to ride. She terrorized every one of us, but she taught me how to ride, and for that I will always be grateful, because she taught me the proper and safe way to do things.
Oh, wow. Oh, thanks.
Well, before I met Susan, I had never even seen a riding helmet, let alone proper riding boots. So, yes, I'm convinced she saved my life.
Yes, and I'm sure she did. You know, a lot of people don't get that lucky.
That's true.
Unfortunately.
That's very true.
Yeah. There are a lot of horse-related accidents, and that goes back to the point about you're writing this book and educating people. You know, this is not the way to do things.
No.
You know, and there's a lot we can learn, and you got lucky, and I have to say I did too. I had many horrifying experiences myself, and like you, I still adore horses. So it didn't break us of our horse habit. But, you know, there's a good way to do things, and there's a not so good way. So let's see. God, horses and people, you know, it's just so interesting. So do you think horses become emotionally attached to their people?
I think that most horses do. I think that horses that have had the benefit of good handling, and by good I just mean kind, kind and relatively informed. I think that those horses can be like in any other pet, and can form the same types of attachment. Horses who have been treated like, you know, a fixture, or who have even worse experienced negligence, or, you know, beyond that, actual cruelty, to me have personalities very similar to cats, and the stereotypical cat, not the average cat, because we know that those two things can be quite different. But the stereotypical cat, where they can take people or they can leave people, you know, and they know that people provide them with food and with shelter and comfort, but they also know that people make them work. And so, given a choice, those types of horses would prefer to be out in the pasture with their buddies. They're the ones who are herd-bound, and so you try to ride them away from the group, and they go nuts. And you get everything in between. I think that there are also differences among horses in breed. Some horses, for example, the Andalusians and Lusitanos, have specifically been bred for personality, for disposition, and work ethic for centuries. They were cavalry horses, and they had to be very focused on their rider, very responsive, intelligent, loyal. All of those qualities had to be bred into them. And then there are other breeds that were bred for a specific function, and they are superb at that function, but disposition and personality were not topping the list necessarily of what breeders were searching for when they searched for the perfect mare and the perfect stallion to combine genes. And as well, gender plays a role. Geldings, you know, neutered males versus stallions versus mares who have foals by their side. There can be a lot of components, which goes back to what you were saying before, which is these are sentient creatures with minds of their own. They have a social structure. They have their own lives, and we kind of fill a place within those lives, and we help to, in an ideal situation, ensure their ongoing health and well-being.
Right.
But we're part of their lives, unlike a bicycle. You ride the bicycle, you put the bicycle down, and the bicycle is inanimate, and it does nothing until somebody forces movement on it, until they pick it up again. Horses are not like that.
No. One of the tragedies I've seen, that one of my little pet peeves is to see people who will go to shows, to ride their horse, but they don't really ride. Their trainer makes them like a push-button horse, and so the little girl or whatever gets on and goes through the motions, but that's the only contact they really have with that animal. Everything else is, they're cheating. They think they're cheating, and they're cheating themselves of what an incredible experience of learning how to be a true partner.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's one of the reasons that organizations like the Pony Club, 4-H and their equestrian section, I'm not as familiar with the others. I'm sure they're equally wonderful. Why I think that they are so critical, because they teach the knowledge of the entire horse, of horse keeping and management, of safety, the rationale behind the different types of bits or bridles or saddles that can be selected, the advantages and disadvantages of putting shoes on a horse, veterinary care. I mean, they teach horse management all the way around, and riding is simply a component of having a horse in your life.
Yes, it's just one of many.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think is so appealing about horses? Why do we love them so much? What is that fascination? Have you thought about it?
I have at great length, and out of curiosity, I've asked other horse people too, and have gotten a lot of different responses. I think what it comes down to is the freedom and the beauty and the expression of nature that we see in horses. They are freedom personified. There's nothing quite so beautiful as a horse running free.
Yeah.
And you can look at photos of horses in full stride or rearing or bucking and playing. You can look at a television program like on the BBC or on Nova or one of those wonderful programs that will zero in on a particular species and go to great lengths to show you what their lives are like, an Animal Planet.
Yeah.
And they'll show extensive footage of horses just galloping across the prairie, the wild mustangs, and you can watch it mesmerized. And even people who are not fond of horses can recognize and appreciate the beauty of those animals and what they represent.
Yeah.
You could also get intellectual about it and say, well, mankind and the growth of civilization has occurred because of horses. It's occurred on the horse's back or with the horse in harness. Everything that we've done, we have achieved because of horses. Now, we have gone beyond horses now, of course, but I think it's telling that we even measure the strength of engines in terms of horsepower.
Right.
Because when Henry Ford first created the car, that was their measure. How many horses does it take to move something?
Right.
And to this day, we still use horsepower.
Right.
As a measurement.
That's true. Wow. I'm just thinking, the horses, there's such an incredible experience that happens when you come up and meet and greet a horse. I remember the last horse I had in my life, Taylor, he would play out in a 30-acre pasture with other horses. And when it was time for me to go, find him and let's play, I would call and I would hear him from the distance begin to run. And there was nothing that was more thrilling to my heart and still brings tears to my eyes to see him burst through the trees and jump over the little hill and all that stuff in a full out gallop with excitement, his head high, his tail flagged, flying with the breeze, delighted to see me.
Absolutely, and I'm actually getting goosebumps. I've seen that sight many times, and I never grow tired of it. It is such a gift that the horse gives you.
Yes.
When he chooses to turn away from his herd and his friends.
Yeah.
And the freedom of being loose, and he chooses your company. There's nothing like it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, boy. All right.
I have an urge to go to the barn all of a sudden.
I know. Okay, let's cut this short. I think I need to go have a horse fix. All right. So let's go back then. So what do you? It seems to me that your daughter is following in your own footsteps, which I can't even imagine how she would not.
Yeah.
But do you think it's just temporary? I mean, should parents be worried that if they get their kids connected with horses, that now they're going to have a cow patty for a daughter, and if they're going to be like a lifelong career, or if it's just a passing fancy? How do you know?
Well, there are a variety of ways that you can know, and I think you've touched on perhaps the most important component, the very first step in a parent-child conversation about the interest in horses, because there are a lot of different ways to enjoy horses.
Yeah.
And most of the time, people think that means jump in full bore, buy a horse, buy a farm, go out there, live in the country, and do the Green Acres thing. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Enjoying a horse can be a simple matter of learning about them, helping out at a barn, or it can be taking lessons or leasing a horse, or sure, ultimately buying a horse. It just depends. Right. But the very first step is to determine just how horse crazy your horse crazy kid is.
Yeah.
And the reality check is a huge part of assessing the level of interest, because the reality of horses is, as I said earlier, it's dirty. Horses, when they are untacked after a lesson, after being ridden, or just because it's fun, will go out and they'll roll in the dirt, they roll in the mud, they get leaves and twigs and all kinds of stuff in their mane, and so the very first step is having to clean all of that. Well, when you get mud and everything off of a horse, where do you think it goes? It goes on whoever's touching them and whoever's cleaning them up. For people who are genuinely horse crazy, it's okay. You smell like a horse, and that's just heaven. There's no perfume that is as nice as that perfume, or smelling like the hay from a barn.
Yes. I still love the smell of a barn. I mean, it just feels like home.
Yeah, all of your cares and tension and stress just melt away when you walk through the door of a barn when you are particularly horse crazy.
Yeah.
Another thing, another way to gauge is to ask your child, if you have to make a choice between the lesson that you committed to going to, or going to a friend's birthday party, or watching that special program on TV, or fill in the blank, going to see a movie. Are you going to stick with the commitment to go ride? Are you going to love it enough? Or if it's freezing cold outside, the wind chill is even worse, and you have to bundle up in order to go ride, are you still going to want to ride? Yeah. Because it's not always 75 degrees and gorgeous outside. There are going to be days, particularly in Texas, where it's 100 degrees outside. Yeah. And there are mosquitoes all over the place. So the reality versus the romance is always the first assessment that a parent needs to make, because then that gives you a clue as to how far your child is going to take it, and how in-depth you need to be to learn about it.
Yes. Yep. Good. That's a really good point. Yep. So parents, take heart. It could be a passing fancy, and only time will tell, but you know what, if you don't ever have the chance to pursue your passion, then it's an unfulfilled dream, and you'll never know. You'll never really know what the gifts were, or the lessons, or how it could have changed your life if you had gone that way. Whether you stuck with it for the rest of your life and made a career out of it or not. I know horses teach us about leadership, and they teach us about responsibility, and they teach us about caring for another being and listening to them and learning from them and partnering with them, teamwork, you name it. They teach us so many things that we use in everything in our life. All our relationships, our work, whatever we choose to do, all of that comes into play.
It also helps significantly in developing maturity and judgment and sticking with your commitments and thinking things through and also anticipating.
That's a good one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because with a horse, if you're riding along and you see horses off in another pasture that are panicking or running, just playing, you have to anticipate how your horse is going to react to it and be ready to deal with that.
Right.
Or if you are in a field and you unwisely left the gate open behind you or just, didn't quite push it all the way to, a horse is going to see that in 2 seconds flat and be going for that gate. And you have to anticipate what could happen and ensure that you don't leave anything to chance, because an old horseman's saying is that if there's a possible way a horse can hurt himself, he's going to do it.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. In a padded stall, he will figure out how to hurt himself.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen.
Yeah, it sounds like you have experience.
Well, you have one horse, and you certainly gain experience, but you have an entire herd of horses, and boy, you see it on a daily basis.
Oh, God. Give them more to do so they're not so bored. I don't know.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Yeah. And part of the difficulty there is that people don't allow horses to be horses. They want to keep them up in stalls and keep them beautiful and clean and contained, and that's not conducive to horses' psychology. They need to be in a herd environment out, in different kinds of weather, so long as it's safe for them, no lightning or hail. Or terribly chilling winds, but they need to be allowed to be a horse. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Do you have any other wonderful or any other fun stories that we can learn from, maybe of your own personal experiences or your daughter's?
Oh, wow. Let's see. What's terrific fun for us is going out and she has a pony, a Welsh pony. That,
good. I had a Welsh pony when I was a kid. That was my first.
Aren't they
horse.
Wonderful?
She was Maisie. Oh my God, big brown eyes that would go right through your heart.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, Abby's pony is called Little Bit.
Okay.
And we bought her for Abby's second birthday, and she's about to turn 9. Abby is about to turn 9, so you can see we've had her all of Abby's life. Mm-hmm. And Little Bit is an absolute treasure. She has the sweetest disposition. She never takes advantage, whether it's in the arena or on a trail. And she takes very good care of Abby. Mm-hmm. Now, the funny thing is, Little Bit is very concerned about Abby's balance. And so when Abby was going from a walk to a trot, it's a difficult transition to make, because the trot, even on a smooth-gaited pony, and happily Little Bit has a smooth gait. Yeah. It's unusual for a pony. Normally it's a very rough gait, the trot. Yeah. But even with what is a smooth gait on Little Bit, it is still up and down. Yes. And so Abby, trying to make the transition from the walk to the trot, Little Bit would begin trotting. She'd go about 3 strides. Abby would start bouncing because she hadn't quite found her seat and how to ride the trot or how to do the rising trot. Right. And Little Bit would just stop because Abby felt insecure in the saddle. Yeah. And I'd watch, and Little Bit would turn her head, and she'd look up at Abby like, hey, are you still up there? And the only way that I could get Little Bit to keep trotting so that Abby could learn how to ride a trot, because you can't just intuit how to do it. You actually have to do it in order to develop the seat. Right. The only way I could induce Little Bit to keep trotting, it's like, it's okay, pony. She really knows, she's got to do this.
She needs to learn how. You have to give her time.
Right. Was to either jog beside her, because I train all of our horses to run beside me, because there are times when they just have to do it. Yeah. And to get her to trot beside me so that I'm jogging while we're doing this, or to lunge her, which is where you stand in the center with a long line going to the horses or the pony's bridle, and they go in a circle around you. Yeah. And by doing those things, it still took some convincing to Little Bit that she really did need to keep trotting, that Abby was okay. But we got her to do it, and now the two of them are partnered very well, and they trot all the time. We're getting ready to do the trot to canter transition.
Oh, really?
And Abby can't wait. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah. Oh, there's just nothing like a great canter.
Oh, it's wonderful.
I know. Oh, man. Oh, God, I got to go get a horse fix. Okay, it's making me really, okay, so So what advice do you have for parents? I know that's a big question. Get the book, obviously. Get a copy of your book, which is great.
That would be terrific, yeah.
Get the book.
Probably why I was drawing a deep breath. Okay, where do I start? I always come back to safety, and safety to me is incontrovertible. It is non-negotiable. Beginning to end, safety must always be the primary thing that the trainer thinks about if you work with a trainer or an instructor. And for non-equestrian parents, I absolutely recommend that they get somebody knowledgeable to help begin teaching their child. Learning to ride is not going out on a trail ride and doing the nose-to-tail thing. People who do that are sitting on a horse.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to sound elitist, but there's a massive difference between sitting on a horse that's just going to go head to tail and follow on this well-worn path back to the barn, versus being on an animal which you are controlling in any situation, in safe situations, in dangerous situations, and something that just crops up that you have no idea that it's even coming, a bag blowing past under your horse's feet. You have to be able to respond to all of it. That is riding.
That's
and an instructor can help a child or an adult learn how to ride in those instances.
Right.
One saying, and horsemen have a million sayings and a million opinions, but one saying has always been, no helmet, no horse. I add, no boots, no helmet, no horse. And the reason for that is every summer, it seems, when horse camps are popular, kids are out of school, parents are working, the kid has to go someplace, let's send him to a horse camp. The kids show up without helmets. They're not required to wear helmets. They're wearing sneakers, and they're riding horses. The danger of a sneaker or any shoe other than a riding boot is that foot can slip right through the stirrup. Yeah. And when you have a rider who is inexperienced, or even an experienced rider can lose their seat and fall. Yes. If your foot slips through the stirrup, you're going to be dragged. And there is nothing more dangerous than that happening. Yeah. It panics the horse. I mean, even thinking about it just gives me chills. I have a hard time formulating the image in my mind of being dragged.
I just noticed I stopped breathing.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thing. There are two things that terrify all riders, and the very top of the list is the foot going in the stirrup and being dragged. Yeah. The second thing is to ride an absolutely crazy horse that would rear and fall over backward on you, but happily those are few and far between. Yeah. The easiest way to address the dragging issue is to have a good riding boot. Yeah. The second aspect of a riding boot is if a horse were to fall sideways, the sole of the boot is rigid and helps to protect the foot from being crushed, side to side by the weight of the horse. A horse, it weighs a tremendous amount. A pony weighs 500-600 pounds. A horse can weigh 1,000, 1,200 pounds or more, depending upon the horse and the breed. Correct. And the third thing that a boot does is the toes are reinforced. If you're going to be around horses, walking around horses, grooming horses, some point you're going to get stepped on. Yes. If you're in a sneaker, your foot can get broken. Yes. In a boot, your foot's protected. So it may not feel good, but your foot is going to be protected. And, the three excellent reasons in my mind to only ride with boots. Even casually, even jumping on a horse and going across a pasture, got to have the helmet on and got to have the boot on. Yes. One thing I wanted to point out about helmets is that it's not just enough to have a hard hat on. No two hard hats are the same. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure that it is a certified helmet, and the reason for that is there's a certification process that has to be met to ensure that helmet provides adequate protection in the event of a fall. Now, riders are always imagining worst-case scenario, and amazingly, we still ride anyway. But ensuring that helmet is certified is the first step. Yeah. And while there are pieces of equipment that can be purchased through resale, which is a terrific way to have your child ride economically, boots, for example, could be purchased that way. Clothes could be purchased that way. A helmet should never be purchased that way. Right. And the reason is helmets have a lifespan, like pretty much everything else. And the lighter weight helmets, for example, that look a lot like bicycle helmets.
Yeah.
They're filled with a filling that grows dry and brittle over time. And consequently, those things have an even shorter lifespan than the more traditional riding helmet with a rigid inside structure. Mm-hmm. But the certification that I'm talking about is ASTM/SEI certified. And all of those acronyms stand for, if anybody's curious, the American Standard for Testing Materials and the Safety Equipment Institute. So they test more than just riding helmets. They test a wide variety of sporting equipment to ensure that it meets safety standards. Yeah. And I simply wouldn't, I don't ride. After 30 years, actually more than that, since I started riding when I was 2, I will not get on a horse for any reason without a helmet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've actually had a helmet save my life. Wow. And it's that one time, it's like insurance. It's that one time that you need it that you sure want to have it on your head.
That's right. Yes. Really good point. And that brings me to the point also is that there is a lot to learn.
There is.
So, and I like one thing you say is that our children's, our love of horses can be something we can participate in, whether or not we share that same passion, right? And
absolutely.
And it's critically important to ask the right questions, to find the best instructors, to learn the ins and outs of horse shows if you're going to do that, and to know how to take those next steps. So, education, right?
Absolutely. And,
Does that help?
And one of the things that makes me anxious, going back to that saddlebred example that we kind of started our conversation with,
right,
is not to just assume that someone who owns a barn and has horses is qualified to teach. They may know more about horses than a non-equestrian parent, but that doesn't mean that they're qualified to teach anybody, and it doesn't mean that their standards are appropriate and that their concentration is on safety, that they know how to teach, that they know how to teach appropriately, not only for age group, but also for experience or inexperience levels. And by the same token, just because they have horses, it doesn't mean that their horses are qualified to be lesson horses.
Yes,
lesson horses
are
treasures, absolute treasures.
Yes.
Because they put up with so much, and they're required to be patient and to have good manners, hour after hour after hour with inexperienced riders, bashing them on the back or yanking their mouths, and, on and on and on. Yeah. And they're absolute treasures to find, and not every barn that offers lessons has good lesson horses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. Good. And you got tons more. So everybody, again, the name of Elise's book is A Parent's Guide to Riding Lessons. And again, we're talking with Elise Gaston Chand. And so, Elise, how do you want people to contact you? How can they get a copy of your book?
Well, 2 answers to your question. The easiest way to track down information would be on the website.
Okay.
EliseGastonChand.com, as you said when we first started talking.
Okay.
All of the contact information is there, as well as how to track down a copy of the book. It's at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Borders.
Excellent.
And for people who are in other states, it's also at the Gift Center at the Kentucky Horse Park in Lexington, Kentucky, the Virginia Horse Center, which is my old stomping grounds.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah, in Lexington, Virginia, 2 different states, same city name. And I believe it's now at the LA Equestrian Center as well.
Awesome. Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah,
because the more we get this out, it's so interesting because we don't have horses in our lives like we used to. Mm-hmm. Ages ago when everybody had a horse and horses helped us survive, and they did so much for us.
They were a fixture,
and now, and now, it's like we've lost a part of our soul when we disconnect from horses. So, I find there's such a treasure of healing, of growth, it's a spiritual journey too. To be with the horse. And there's so many gifts that they give us. So, I guess for everybody then, final words. What would your final thing you want everybody to know?
Well, just a couple of things that as complex as all of this sounds, with the terminology and the breeds and the colors and learning and instructors and equipment and everything else, it really is not that difficult to get into it. And the learning process is an important one. It can be a fun one because your child would be learning it all at the same time too. Now, they may have had an earlier start because they were the ones who kind of instigated the interest in horses.
Right.
But still, they will be learning in the entire process, and there's an opportunity for the parents to learn along with them.
Yes.
It's possible to be involved with horses economically.
Yeah.
I list a number of resources throughout the book on ways to find less expensive equipment, on how to utilize clothes, for example, that your child already has at home. You don't need special outfits just for training. Yeah. Unless you're in a very, very unique situation, and then the instructor would tell you, and probably the cost wouldn't be an issue at that point.
Yeah, correct.
Trainers and instructors may or may not be qualified to teach your child. You know, we talked about that before, but I think that it is absolutely critical that parents not be intimidated by an instructor or a trainer's degree of knowledge. That doesn't mean not to cooperate or to speak openly with the trainer and the instructor, not to respect them, but it does mean to be sure that they genuinely have the level of knowledge, experience, expertise, the equipment, the horses, and everything else that they need in order to teach your child effectively and safely. Yes. So don't think that they're professionals simply because they know more about horses than you do. You know more about your child than they do, and you never should be in a position where you feel you need to abdicate the control or the directions that your child receives or the situations that they find themselves in. Yes.
Well said. Yeah. Okay, parents, take heart. Take heart, and if you've got a horse-crazy kid, educate yourself and be sure to give your child the gift, the amazing, life-changing gift and opportunity to be around horses. You know, to fulfill that desire, that passion, that interest. So, thank you, Elise.
Thank you so much, Val. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, I've so enjoyed talking with you. Okay, everybody, go get a copy of her book. Check it out, EliseGastonChand.com, or the book is A Parent's Guide to Riding Lessons. Thank you, Elise.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.